welcome back to the Mezcal Buzz experience. We finally did it. We finally coordinated. We got the man in here, Lucas Assis. We're finally happy to have you here. We've been talking about it for a long time.
I know.
Thank you for joining us.
Nah, thank you, man. Thanks for having me here. And I know it's been like a year of us trying to get a date together. So
Yeah.
I'm glad it finally worked out.
And it's cool because a lot of you watching, I'm sure you know who our guest is and follow him already. I get it a lot of the times too, like, oh, you have a mezcal channel, or you should follow this guy. You should follow. Like, guys, I know I do. It's cool. But
Thanks,
I mean, you've been traveling a lot. You just got back recently as well from trips. Do you want to catch us up on what's been happening in your life, travel life, and stuff?
Yeah. I was just in Mexico, and at this point, I'm in Guadalajara like twice a month. It's become like our second home. We love it there, and it's always cool to go for work, but also see our friends and everything that's in Guadalajara, our favorite bars and all that. But I was in Mexico for like 2.5 weeks this time. It was a little longer because it was more like it was a work and travel with family kind of thing. So we went in for Patron. We had a trip with Patron where we saw the Patron 100 that came out. So we got to go to the Hacienda and spend some time there too. And then Michelle, my wife's parents, then flew to Guadalajara, and then we kind of did a road trip. So my suegro is from Zacatecas, this little rancho in Zacatecas that's maybe like 200 people, 150 people. And we hadn't been in like 7 years. So it was cool that we got to, meet them at the airport and then drive to Zacatecas. It was the fiestas, so the town parties of the patron saint of the town. So we got to see, the festivities for that. And then after that, we drove another 10, 11 hours to Michoacán to see Michelle's mom's side of the family and stayed there for a little bit too. And then came home for some work. So this trip was a little bit of like, work and fun and vacation. But yeah, I'm in Guadalajara a lot, working with different brands and consulting for trips, helping brands bring, if they want to open, like especially the LA market, they, come to me to see like what bartender should we bring and what bars should we focus on. So I help them with that. Some recipe creation as well with brands over there, and some guest shifts at bars as well. So there's always something. We were also just in Sonora. I feel like this month we've drove in Mexico more than we have probably ever, because we went to the Tucson Agave Heritage Festival, which is an amazing festival. And from there, then we drove down to Hermosillo, and we did a Bacanora trip, which was a part of Mexico that I hadn't been to. And also like a mezcal or, a destilado de agave that I didn't know much about.
Oh, yeah.
I knew some of the history, the prohibition of it and how long it was prohibited for production. And, people died trying to making Bacanora. But to get to spend some time driving all over Sonora, which is a huge state, and seeing that was awesome too. It was like something new for me, which was really cool. So.
Dang, that was a lot.
That's awesome.
A lot to
That was
unpack.
the last month.
It's funny.
No wonder it's taken so long to get you on the show. Yeah.
No, totally. That was a lot because I think I had all these questions like my eyes were rolling back like a shark right now. Like, all right, remember that? We were going to pull a bottle right now, but right now because of your trip, I want to pull if we could do our first tasting. Let's pull that Jaramillo there.
Okay.
If you see that.
Which one is? Oh, cool.
And the reason is this one's from Zacatecas. So I was going to ask
no way.
if you got any tastings or mezcales.
I didn't, man. It was one of those things that, like, one, because it's a rancho, right? There's nobody that's going to have anything good here. And, of course, they're drinking the usual stuff that small towns in Mexico are drinking. But then it wasn't until, like, the last day that we were there, there's, like, this little door that's kind of a cantina in the rancho there. And we were talking to family, and they're like, oh, yeah, no, we were there. And, like, oh, these guys were, like, drinking tepe. And I was like, wait, what? And they're like, yeah, we were drinking tepe. And I was like, wait, there's tepe here. And they were talking about how, it's not too far from here. The tepehuanas that makes it, like Mesonte has a tepe expression. It's incredible mezcal. But by the time I found this out, we were leaving, so I didn't even get to go to the cantina and see what they had.
Okay.
So I'm like, okay, next time now I know to bring some bottles with me and then start asking questions.
Yeah, right on.
But I haven't tried much from Zacatecas.
Cool. This one is Mezcal Jaramillo. It's from the Jaramillo family. In the region, I'd have to check the region, but I met Isabella Jaramillo, and this is from, it doesn't say here. I'm sorry, I can't tell you the region.
Okay.
But this is made with agave salmiana.
Okay, it does smell like a salmiana.
And an interesting thing is that I found a couple of things interesting from this one, from what she was telling me. Her father's a producer. They do it in traditional brick ovens de mamposteria, like above ground. Instead of putting a lot of wood in it, they do it with like fibers and pencas that are left over. So not like a lot of heat and a lot of smoke that comes out very slow. And this one's at 50. But one thing that I thought was interesting that she was telling me is that they brought it up higher ABV because they're at a lot of the Mezcal Fest around Mexico, and Oaxaca predominates with their expressions being higher ABV. But she's like, traditionally, we like our mezcales around 40% ABV here, but people were like, oh, that's not high proof enough. That's not. She's like, so we've started upping them. But so she was like, I would love you to come and taste what our gusto is, right?
Right.
But so this is. I was
That's
like,
so
hey,
cool.
you just came back. Let's taste a.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I want to check out where they're from. And man, that's a really good salmiana.
I get other times we've tasted it before. We were saying I get like a waxy. I called it crayon at the time.
I had like
totally see that.
the candy corn.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah.
a little bit. Yeah.
But then I
Like
get a
kind of
lot
a
of green
sweet box.
apple. But
But a little cheesy too, right? Like a little
yeah.
that Greek yogurty
Yeah.
funkiness. That's really nice. That's really cool, man. Thanks for sharing that. I haven't had much from Zacatecas other than like derrumbes and like, hacienda buñuelos and stuff, which is funny enough, Michelle's last name, but nothing to do with, with that family. Yeah.
I want to go back a little bit because when we unpacked right now all that info you're saying, I guess there's going to be a multiple part question, right?
Yep.
So like apart from your public profile and sharing brands and working in all the traveling, you were mentioning a lot of other things that you do, like consulting, you do a lot of gestures, you're bartending. Catch us up a little bit, like who's Lucas Assis before the fame, right? Yeah, before all that, like what's your background? How does the world of mezcales and agave spirits come into play, and then how you're now working on other things besides like not just on camera and sharing, right? You're doing a lot of other projects, it seems.
Yeah, absolutely, man. To see how far we want to go back, but
I was born
long time. So back in Brazil. So I am, Brazilian, born and raised in Brazil. So I was born in Brasilia, the capital of Brazil, but grew up in the south part of Brazil, near Argentina. Paraná is the state, Londrina is the city. And then long story short, again, my dad came to study. My dad was a pastor. He's not a pastor anymore. But he's still very much involved in the church and mostly with nonprofit organizations in Africa. So I grew up with this notion of like, one, the world is small because my dad was traveling the whole world when I was little, and there was somebody from a different country in our house literally every weekend, right? So then when I was 10, 11, we moved to the U.S. because my dad came to study and get his PhD here. So we went first to Spokane, Washington. That's where I learned English. We lived there for like 6 months. And then moved down to LA, where my dad started going to school here. And then basically my parents split up, went back to Brazil. And then when I was 17, came back to finish high school and just stayed with my dad. So that's like, long story short, my journey to the U.S. But right out of high school, I was trying to look for a job. My dad was like, hey, you need to figure this out. You need to get a job. And I started applying a bunch of different places. Had no desire to work at restaurants, never even thought about it. And this one week, my dad was good friends with somebody that, one of the owners of Houston's restaurants, Hillstone Restaurant Group.
Yeah.
And they were talking. He said, "Oh, my son is looking for a job," and they were like, "Oh, he should apply at the Pasadena location." And my dad told me, and I was like, "Dad, I don't want to work that, But then I was like, "But I also always wanted to travel. I always wanted to take time off and just I had this romantic idea of just backpacking across Europe for a year or something like that." So I was like, "What job would allow me to do that?" And I was like, "Well, restaurant jobs, because if you get your shifts covered, they don't care how often you're here,
Yeah.
So I went in for their interview, got the interview, and I really fell in love with this hospitality industry, way more than I wanted to. And I was back in high school, man, I was just like this really shy metal kid, with like super long hair and makeup and painted nails and like, and getting into the hospitality kind of just brought me out of this like shy shell, talking to people and all that, and became a host there, and we started getting bigger in the hosting thing, became like the head host, and then kind of cheesy, but like I became 21, I was like, hey, I want to become a bartender. Bugging the managers over and over again. And then one day somebody called out and they're like, do you want to become a bartender? And I was like, yeah. He's like, then get behind the bar right now on a double. And I was like, let's do it. Cool. And then I remember the first day, they're like teaching me how to cut limes and how to fill the ice bins and everything like that. And then I became the service well bartender. At Houston's, when you start as a service well. So basically you're making the cocktails for the dining room. You're not really interacting with the guests. But for me, it was awesome because it just made me, one, learn the classics, learn the speed that Houston's, demands from you, and also learn how to be clean, which I think are good qualities of a bartender, fast, clean, and knowledgeable. And so I, just really started getting more and more into spirits. And when I like something, I get obsessed over it. So I wanted to know not just how to make an old fashioned or a Cosmo or a margarita. I wanted to know who made it and where and why and all that. So I started researching all that and really falling into that. And then really started getting more into whiskey. And then one of the head servers at Houston's left to start a new project called Plant Check in Westwood. And he brought me with him.
Oh, cool.
He was just like, hey, I want you to come with. So I went in, and that was my actual first bartending job, where I was literally talking to guests and all that. And again, I just really fell in love with it. And, the restaurant really was focused on craft whiskey and beer. This was during the time when everybody was just talking about bourbon, right?
Yeah.
Plant Check was like the biggest buyer of Buffalo Trace in LA. So we were getting all the pappies, and I was getting into that world of collecting, and then they focused on Japanese whiskey. So whiskey was the first spirit that, you can't talk about American history and not talk about whiskey and all those kinds of things. So again, I got obsessed with it.
Yeah.
And then one day, as different restaurants in LA started focusing to agave, and that's when we started seeing, restaurants like Gracias Madre, and all that come out. The restaurant that Plant Check also did the shift into agave spirits. And at this point, I'm the beverage director of the program. I'm training on the bartenders. We opened 3 restaurants at this point in LA already. So this is fast forwarding a few years. And I remember the CEO of the company telling me, because I was starting to get into tequila, and mostly because I started dating Michelle. We started going down to Mexico with her, drinking tequila with her dad, that kind of stuff. So I was just starting
naturally,
to naturally, just a little bit of what is this tequila thing and this mezcal thing, right? And then the CEO of the company was like, hey, I know you're learning more about that. We're hiring this executive chef who was the first guy to open a mezcaleria in the U.S. called Mezcal in Denver. If you want to learn, you need to be with him. So I met, his name is Sean Yantz, and Sean literally taught me everything. I became a sponge around him. He was awesome. He would take me to tastings. He would take me to events. Any brands that would come in, to taste some stuff, he would bring me with him, and he'd ask him questions and all that. And he kept telling me about this brand called Fortaleza. He's like, you need to know about this brand. And he's he's a Harley guy. So he was really good friends with Guillermo. They would ride Harleys all the time and stuff. And then he brought in Fortaleza, and he said, anybody come in and asks for shots or anything else, you serve them this. If they don't like it, just buy them the shot.
Yeah.
And I never had to buy anybody a shot. But this was also a time where I would order a case of Fortaleza from Wine Warehouse, and they would deliver 2 because they couldn't move it, right? So they were trying to move Fortaleza. Wow. And so I started becoming more obsessed about mezcal and tequila in general because of that. And then one of Michelle's best friends was getting married in Tapalpa in Jalisco. So then it was an excuse for us to go to Jalisco. So then I told Sean, I was like, hey, I'm going to be there. Can I go to tequila? And he's like, oh, you got to go to Fortaleza. So Fortaleza was my first distillery. And I remember walking in, seeing that place, and thinking oh, I'm going to be obsessed with this.
Yeah.
This is insane. This is art. And long story short, that kind of is exactly what happened. And I talk about Fortaleza a lot, and people think, oh, the influencers get paid. I'm telling you right now, Fortaleza doesn't pay any influencers. For me, what I talked about it too, it's this personal story for me. It's this sentimental value of the brand. That's the first brand that I got into, the first brand that I saw the story of it, and the first brand that I got to see the distillery. So it's part of my tequila journey, not just because it's an incredible tequila, right?
Yeah.
Can I ask on that to expand? Because I think, like, how awesome is it for, like, brands or programs that are growing in any sector, I guess, right? But in the agave spirit sector, in this case, to have someone like you that's not only just, like, interested, but it's, like, hyper interested. Like, you're looking, you're learning, and you're seeking that more information. So the way that you linked up with Fortaleza and went there, it seems, like you said earlier, very natural. My question, I guess, is this, because you mentioned a good point, you're like, oh, the influencers get paid, or this sounds like this was kind of pre all of that.
Yeah, this was
happening.
2017.
Yeah, so this is like a different type of visit at the time of what now they are, huh?
Yeah, at that point they were doing like industry only. You couldn't just go to Fortaleza, you know. They were doing their industry trips that as a bartender you always heard how epic the industry trips were in Fortaleza. But yeah, as far as I know, they weren't doing tours like you can just, you know, buy a tour and tour the distillery like you can now. So yeah, this is in 2017. So that's when I really became obsessed, right? And then I also got to go down to Oaxaca. Sean put me together with Del Maguey. We went for my 30th birthday, so this is in 2019 now. And it was this, you know, we were supposed to visit a bunch of producers, and we got to the first one in Santa Catarina, Minas, and we just hit it off, and we stayed there until midnight, didn't go anywhere else, you know? And again, I was like, man, and it was like literally my 30th birthday, and I was just like, God, I'm really getting obsessed with this. It was like, yeah, there's something mystical about the mezcal and agave in Mexico, right? And at this point, me and Michelle were married, and I was just like, you know, in love with Mexican culture, the food, and all that. And that's 2019. 2020 then came more into like the content stuff, because I've always liked to take pictures, to film. Like all these trips that I'm talking to, they're probably on YouTube somewhere, because I was just filming because I wanted to film.
Yeah.
And then I would just edit them and post, and just, there was never a plan. It was just like, I like taking pictures and filming and editing, and I want to share it because, you know, why not, kind of thing. But when the pandemic started, you know, the job that I was still working at Plant Shack was underneath the apartment building. So 90% of the people that came to the bar are regulars. Most of them had my phone number, knew my schedule. And then one of them asked me once, like, hey, you know, everything okay? Checking in on you, but also we really missed your cocktail. So we started talking. He was like, man, it's a Friday night. I'm like at home with my wife. Would you make us like a margarita to go? And I was like, man, I don't think the city's going to crack down on bartenders trying to make some money when the world's ending. Right? So I said, yeah. So I literally made it, put it in a mason jar, and I put it like in his front door, stepped, you know, 10 feet away, and like waved and then left. But then that day he told his friends, and the next day the friends started texting me for margaritas. And it just became this like word of mouth thing. Then I was like, wait, this might be a cool thing to do. There's something here. Yeah. So then I decided to just say something like, okay, I'm going to create a new menu every Tuesday. I'm going to create a new cocktail menu. And then you order the day before, the next day I deliver. So the first like 4 months of the pandemic, that's what I was doing from like 9 to 5. It became a thing. You know, and it was all through Instagram. So every Tuesday I'll post a new menu on my Instagram. Yeah. And not only did it like ease the craziness of the pandemic when we're not doing anything, but it kept me the creativity of bartending, right? Yeah. Whenever it's slow when you're bartending is when you're creating different things, you're trying different things, and there's a regular there like, hey, try this. Yeah. And that's one of my favorite parts of bartending. And that still let me do that, you know? So I was still trying to do different syrups and infusions at home, trying to create different cocktails. Michelle was still working her 9 to 5, and she was like in the childcare business kind of thing. So she was like working a lot because she was in charge of like knowing the regulations and that were changing every day to, you know, tell the childcare providers that. But anyway, so I'd get home at 5 and she'd be getting off of her laptop and then we would be like making syrups and infusions and, you know, packaging everything for the next day. So that's when I saw like a growth on social media because of this thing. And then when things started to open in LA, I was like, hey, I don't want to get in trouble with this. So I did a hard last call. Then people started asking me like, okay, if you can't, we get it, you can't sell it, but like, can you teach us how to make it? Yeah. So then I was like, oh man, that's a no-brainer. So then I started posting tutorials on how to make the cocktails. I started posting about, you know, agave spirits and my knowledge of that and my thoughts and feelings about it. And then that's when I saw it growing into something else, you know. So yeah, I feel like I talked a bunch, but that's kind of like a little bit of the story.
I mean, maybe we can get into this with another pour. I think we can just keep the conversation going and get another pour in. But I want to go back to kind of like that creativity and when you're experimenting with flavors, because I love to cook and my wife loves to cook, and so we're always like trying new things in the kitchen. And I just want to know like where do you find like inspiration for different flavors, or when you're like trying to come up with these new cocktails, like where are you pulling that?
I love that. I think it's a little bit of everything. I think a lot of it has to do with food.
Yeah.
Like, hey, this really works. I just made today, just like playing around, this like watermelon feta cheese mint cocktail, because I was like, I love a good watermelon feta cheese salad.
Yeah.
What I mean? So those are things that like pop up. I feel like there's a really cool community in the bartending space too, that we talk a lot. And we like bounce questions off of each other, so that can be inspiring. Like, oh, that sounds really cool. Like, oh, what if I do this?
Yeah.
So that's been a really cool community. That's like, especially in the last few years.
Yeah.
Especially in the content side, that we talk a lot. I
was gonna say there's like a lot of like, I feel like when we go to these events and we're meeting these other bartenders, and because we're not obviously not bartenders ourselves, but it seems like it's a pretty tight community. And there's a lot of like, it seems like there's a lot of collaboration.
For sure.
Yeah.
And even outside of the content space, like LA, man.
Yeah.
It's a tiny industry, especially in a city the size of LA.
Yeah.
But everybody knows everybody, or the guy that knows that other person, you know what I mean? And it's one of the things that I love about LA. Of course, I'm generalizing, right?
Yeah.
For the most part, it's this really like tight-knit community that there's it's like growth and competition and not competing with each other, which I feel like a lot of the big cities with like, there's more of a competition that I don't love,
Yeah.
And in LA, no, it's like about bringing the industry together, and especially with like what Max is doing with Daisy and Mirate, but there's also like Mike at Thunderbolt and, Death and Co is here too.
Yeah.
I can name a bunch of bars, but like you see that there's just camaraderie between these guys outside of the content side, and actually the ones that are being behind the bar, that's really cool to see.
Yeah. I feel like that's true. That's a great point, because it's kind of like the genuine interest that everybody has, that when you do come together, it's like it's not competing. Like you see someone doing like something, you're learning, you're collaborating with stuff. So.
Exactly. I love when cities have, like Guadalajara for me, I think is one of the cities that has that the most. Everybody's friends with everybody. Everybody has their own bars, but like, you see El Gallo Tanero doing a party and inviting bars from all over Guadalajara, or Mecenas for their first anniversary, they're celebrating at El Gallo Tanero. You know what I mean? There's like this really cool camaraderie of like, no, it's about the industry.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons why I love the cocktail scene in Guadalajara.
Yeah, I was just going to say, go ahead.
I was just, to continue on that, I was going to say that's a great transition to maybe our next
pour.
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
You could ask, tell us about that.
Yeah.